Welcome to Inspired Living with Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. Every Wednesday, Marc, along with his special guests, will explore thought-provoking topics and ideas that promote creativity, self-help, healing, happiness, and well-being to inspire you on your spiritual journey. Each week, Marc will discuss different paths to achieving a more spiritual, balanced, happy, and healthy lifestyle. Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience and all things spiritual. Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. Marc is a tested, certified, and professional spiritual medium, metaphysical teacher, healer, and spiritual advisor with a spiritual practice based in Seattle, Washington. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be in this beautiful planet of ours. This is Inspired Living Radio. I'm your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. And I just want to thank you for joining us today for this live show where we're going to be talking about after-death communications, or ADCs. So grab your coffee, grab your tea. We're going to take the next 60 minutes, about 58 minutes, to explore and discover through mind, body, and spirit. And I just want to say thank you so much to all of our inspired listeners all around the globe who have helped push Inspired Living Radio up to the number 22 spot, according to FeedSpot, is best 70 inspirational podcast to listen to in 2022. So it's fitting that Inspired Living would now be plugged in at number 22, which is, by the way, from a numerology standpoint, is a master number. So I just want to say, give a shout out to all of our inspired listeners all around the planet. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate it. And we are seeing more reviews on whatever your favorite podcasting platform is. We are getting more reviews every week, and I truly appreciate open and honest feedback. I'm always honored and humbled by the messages that we receive from inspired listeners. So with that, if you want to just take a second to head over to OMTimes Radio. You found the global player. You can also find the global player at marclainhart.com. You can also interact with us on our social media pages. So we have our Facebook page, which is Inspired Living Radio and Podcast. It is a public group open to anybody that's on Facebook. You may not be on Facebook, so you can find us over on Twitter and Instagram. And that name to follow is Inspired For Us, and that is the number 4. We're on the air every Wisdom Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and if you're somewhere in between or friends over in Europe, that's usually 8 p.m., 9 p.m. I'm here in Seattle, Washington, so I'm in the Pacific Northwest, so it's 12 o'clock my time. And we just really try to come on in our 7th season of doing the show to inspire, to motivate, to encourage, to educate. We've had a lot of amazing guests on the show in the past 7 seasons. We've covered many different topics. And today I wanted to talk about after-death communications, or what I like to call ADCs. We're going to be doing a meditation here in a little bit to help you actually practice on one of your clairs. But before I get there, I want to just do a little background and talk about what ADCs are. We're going to talk a little bit about religion and belief systems. We're going to talk about mediumship. We're going to talk about the psychic. And we're going to explore. And what I like to do is, what I say prospecting, is to go a little bit deeper below the surface. I've come to learn that just because you don't see it with your real eye does not mean it's not there. There's a whole world that is unseen, or as I like to say, explore the unseen, see the seen, and we are somewhere in between. So if you want to ever call in, we do have a live call-in number. That is 202-570-7057. Chris, our producer, will put you in the waiting room if you have a question. We'll take calls the second half of the show, I think, if anybody wants to call in and have a conversation about mediumship. I'm not doing any live readings on the air. You can always catch me over on my Metaphysical Mocha Monday show on Facebook Live and YouTube for readings and mediumship and all that. But today I want to explore after-death communications and the intelligence and the love and the language that does continue on after death. I always like to say that education, comprehension, and application in modern-day mediumship is a lifelong vocation of the mind, body, and spirit. And it's something that I didn't always do. I didn't always do mediumship. I didn't really tune into the psychic sciences, if you will. And it wasn't until, around the year 2000 that my family was impacted by what I call today trauma and tragedy, or the TNT that blew my life up. And, I was witness to a brother that was murdered. 3 days later, my older brother was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And at that same time, my father in law was slowly transitioning to the spirit world with multiple sclerosis, a horrible, horrible disease. And during that time of great grief, it really was hard to comprehend, one, but two, cope with everything that was going on. Did a lot of met with a lot of psychologists, and I was actually told that when you have a family member that's murdered, your stress index is already maxed out at 100%. So I was well beyond that threshold of being stressed out and going through funerals and murder trials, and it was a lot to being in the news. It was a lot to take on. But years later, 22 years later, I can sit here and talk about this today with all of you, because I'm sure in your path you have lost a close loved one, a fur baby, a friend, a colleague, what have you. And I started to have experiences after those events, the trauma that triggered the ability to communicate with the unseen. And this is not just necessarily those that have lived and have passed over. This could also be your higher self. This could be ascended masters, your spirit guides. I was kind of getting all of that wrapped up in one. And as a very analytical, rational person who is always trying to err on the side of logic, it was really opening a Pandora's box for me to understand why, first, why me? And second, is this real? And I can tell you 22 years later, after the fact of those events and those transformative experiences, it's very real. And I've done thousands of readings since with people all around the world. And I can tell you the one thing is, as I always tell my clients, I'm either a really good guesser or there is something more to this communication, this language of spirit, or these ADCs, after death communications, which is interactions with the mystical, the universe, the unseen. We start to look for signs, symbols, synergy, synchronistic events. But along that pathway, I also struggled with my identity as a person, higher consciousness, my belief systems, how I was raised, religious aspects to this, because I was actually taught, being brought up about not talking to a psychic or a medium. So we're going to talk about this in a little bit. Of the intelligence and the communications of what ADCs are, and that you yourself can start to communicate with those that have passed on, or your higher self, or your spirit guides, or your sun masters, whatever your belief system is, without the worry of being possessed or something evil or nefarious or something that you may have seen in a Hollywood movie. I can tell you, in doing this professionally since 2007, I haven't encountered any of that. Quite the opposite. So I became a spiritualist back in 2015, and for those of you that have a different religion, we're going to talk about religions. We're going to talk about the major religions of the world. I'm going to explain the top 10 religions that are out there. We are going to talk a little bit of scripture in the Bible. I always like to remind people that I know scripture, but I'm not a preacher, if you will. Just being that I was raised in Catholicism, which is, Christianity here in the Pacific Northwest in the United States, of where I was raised, is a very strong foundation of Catholicism, Christianity, and learning scripture. And so when I started to have these ADCs, these after-death communications, I really struggled with the belief system, even questioned my own sanity. Like, I'm hearing these voices. What does this mean? Am I going to hell? Am I being possessed? All of that. And that's when I started to reach out, and I started to explore and prospect people that have been doing this for a while, teachers, tutors. Actually started going down to the Berkeley Psychic Institute. There's actually an institute in California called the Berkeley Psychic Institute to learn about intuition, to learn about the five senses, which we would call the sixth sense, which is in conjunction with our five senses. And then that led me to the Omega Institute in New York, and then eventually over across the pond to England, north of London, to a college called Arthur Findlay College, where I studied for over a decade in mediumship, healing, psychic sciences, and then, of course, today being tested and a professional psychic and spiritual medium. So I became a spiritualist in 2015, and for those of you that have never heard of this, spiritualism is actually an official recognized religion. It has its own churches and educational centers. There's a lot of spiritual churches in the UK, all the way up to Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and there's churches spread out. I want to say there's over 2,200 now or so. I might be off on that number, but there's a big following of spiritual churches here in where I'm at in Seattle. We have independent spiritualist churches, but a lot of the churches have their own ministers, and they possess the same rights and privileges as any other religion does. It's a non-for-profit 501c. But the philosophy of spiritualism is where it really kind of captured my attention, because being raised as a Catholic, I was having things in a book tell me that you shouldn't be doing this, and then I was now seeing another religion saying, no, actually, you should be doing this and you should promote it because it helps with grieving. And I was in a really tough way. I was grieving really, really hard. And so they follow based on what they call the 7 fundamental principles. And what it is spiritualism is a religion that embodies the main ideas of all religions. And boy, my ears kind of perked up when I read that. I was like, all religions. Okay, it's not just exclusive to one religion. It's actually encompassing and actually bringing in other philosophies and other perspectives of religion, where the religion I've been is you need to be a part of this religion. If you're not, then your religion's false. And I just never have agreed with that. So, but the main idea is with a spiritualism, with a spiritualist church, it is that there is life after death, immortality, and the existence of a God. The difference between spiritualism and other religions is the ability through mediumship to prove that man and woman survive physical death. Mediums are able to communicate with those who have died, thus furnishing conclusive evidence of the continuous existence of the human soul, and or what we would call consciousness. I've come to learn as a full voting member, that spiritualism is also a universal religion, and the main focus of which is embodied in their 5th principle, which is called personal responsibility. And when I read that, I'm like, sign me up. Personal responsibility, because in religions I find that sometimes wanes and that's sometimes not recognized. But we are given free will and the ability to distinguish between right and wrong, therefore alone are responsible for all our thoughts and actions. And in addition, we are our own judges here and now, and we will receive compensation and retribution in accordance with their 6th principle, which is compensation and retribution hereafter for all good and evil deeds done on earth. So that's a little bit about spiritualism. That's my pathway as a spiritualist, something that I practice. And it's something that I started to incorporate into my readings as a medium. Now, doing this work since 2007, I've come up against a lot of opinions, a lot of ridicule, a lot of cynicism, a lot of pundits, a lot of critics, coming from, a lot of times I find from a conscious bias, a bias or a narrative that fits, the Bible of their belief, or maybe a book that they've read, or a movie that they've seen. And I can tell you with ADCs and after-death communications, it really is not about talking with the dead or being caught up in a religious debate. It really is about grieving and bringing forth love and hope and transformation. And that's the one thing that I've learned in doing it all these years. I find that, religion gives individuals really a sense of purpose. For me, it was that sense of purpose, and it's been, I think, one of the most powerful forces in human history. I think to understand various religions is understanding the values and the beliefs that drive a group of people to act and believe the way they do, specifically on where you're at in the world. I think, teaching students, teaching my group. I have a spiritual development group. We talk about this all the time. We talk about other religions. We talk about world religions. And teaching it can be, and explaining it can be a significant risk. As religious tolerance is the ideal result, but we see in this day and age, not everybody has religious tolerance. But by being able to comprehend how religion plays a role in the cultural identities of people all over the world, I have learned personally, and my students and those that I've mentored have learned to be less quick to judge others based upon their beliefs and more likely to embrace individuals of all faiths. So that's how I kind of looked at religion. I look at religion as like one record. There's 12 different songs or 15 different songs, whatever, an old record of vinyl. I'm thinking a vinyl record, or even I guess you could say a CD or even a digital download. There's all these different tracks, and those tracks are based on religion, all part of the same universe, part of the same accountability of love, personal responsibility, free will, and choice. Just each song has a different, story, a different variance, if you will. And if we talk about all the different religions out there, almost all the religions talk about spirituality. We've got the Holy Bible, of course, which I have right here next to me on my studio that I've read from cover to cover. We have the Holy Quran or the Quran. We have the Bhagavad Gita. That's always a tongue twister for me, the Bhagavad Gita. We have the Tripitaka. We have the Holy Vedas. We have the 4 books, the Tao Te Ching, the Talmud, and the Kojiki. Those are some of the most read books around the world. And so what I started to do was starting to explore all those different books to see what do they say about mediumship, spirituality, and connecting with those that have crossed over. So when we come back from our first break, we're going to pick up this conversation and get a little bit more depth into beliefs, systems, and also do a meditation to work with our clairs. So we'll be right back in just a few minutes. Thanks for listening today. This is Inspired Living Radio, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
The future of internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Listeners, we hope you're enjoying the shows here on OMTimes Radio. Marc Lainhart here and host of Inspired Living Radio. And I'd like to invite you to my morning show of inspiration, encouragement, healing, motivations, transformations, and discovering that diamond within. Metaphysical Mocha Mondays every Monday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, over on the Intuitive Prospector Facebook page and my YouTube channel, Soul Adventures. Dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live and discover that diamond within.
Coping 19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
Do you feel like your emotions are all over the place? That's normal during this abnormal time. There are a number of ways to cope. Maintain a healthy routine, get enough sleep, eat nutritious food, and exercise at least 30 minutes each day. Schedule some time to talk with a friend or family member. And remember, you can always take a few deep breaths to feel more centered.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
And welcome back to Inspired Living. Today's episode, we are talking about ADCs, also known as after-death communications, exploring, prospecting, philosophizing, educating, and sharing my perspective, because really it is my perspective, of doing a lot of different readings with people all around the world over this last decade to see that there is really something of consciousness, of life after death. That or I'm just one heck of a really good guesser, and I don't think people would pay me to guess. And I've learned along the way, it's helped me in my transformations to find that diamond within of healing, transformation, inspiration to live again. And, before the break, I was talking about, the different religions around the world and how I started to look at what, the main books. And again, the Bible is not the only book. That's one book based on where you're raised. But before the break, I talked about the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, the Holy Vedas, the Quran, the Tao Te Ching, the 4 books, the Upanishads. Let's see here, what else? The Talmud, the Kojiki. These are all books based on where you're raised in the world, whether it's Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, Taoism. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so when I started to have these experiences that was triggered by trauma and tragedy, I started to have this communication with something I couldn't see with the physical eye. And the first communications that I received, and most people that have had an experience, a spiritual experience, a traumatic experience, a near-death experience, an out-of-body experience, become aware of this world that's unseen. And like I said, just because we don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. I'm looking out my window and I see the big tree moving back and forth, but I can't see what's moving the tree, but I know that we call that wind. So that wind is moving the tree, but I don't see the wind with my physical eye. Or if if I jump off a diving board into the pool, I know that the theory of gravity is going to apply because I'm not going to stay up in the air and float. I'm going to drop into that pool. Or another perspective of what is unseen is the rainbow. We see the rainbow when it's after a storm or light is refracted in a certain way. I'm thinking the cover of Pink Floyd, where that light prism is going through the white light, and it's all white light, and then that prism reflects the colors of the rainbow, the 7 colors of the rainbow, which 7 is another interesting topic of numerology that we don't have time to get into for this episode. But think about those colors being present 24/7, 365, all day long. We just don't see it in that way. We don't see in that spectrum. So we could apply the telescope, we could apply the microscope. The debate raged on for years. If you couldn't see it with the physical eye, it didn't exist. Microscope comes into reality, and we understand that there's a whole world that is unseen with the eye. And we're going to continue to learn in our Roaring 20s what I've talked about, learning more about our universe and how the universe is going to let us know that we're not alone in this universe, including the James Webb Telescope that comes online in just a few months. It's already out there 1 million miles out in its orbit. It's all tuned in, ready to go, and it's going to give us a new perspective into our universe, which when we learn about our universe, we learn about us. It's just like learning about our ocean. We've only discovered 5 to 7% of our ocean, so imagine how much more that we have not yet gleaned from what we don't understand. So all of this, taking this all together, this is where I really struggled with my belief systems, my background, my education, and understanding, okay, why is this happening to me? Why are these communications coming through? And the first way that I received the communications is what we call clairvoyance. Now, before the break, I talked about the 5 senses: see it, taste it, touch it, hear it, smell it. Those are the physical human 5 senses that most people have. Some people don't have maybe the ability to see or to hear, or maybe paralysis, can't touch, but they've also shown, and science has shown, that they can actually rewire their brain and use their abilities to actually focus. Maybe if they can't see, they can actually hear. I'm thinking of Helen Keller. She couldn't see or hear, but yet we still remember her. So she was able to tune into her other senses. And with the 6th sense, or what we call the clairs, clairsentience is the ability for those that are no longer here that have a voice that can communicate with you in your mind. Now the question becomes, is that my imagination? Did I think that, or was that a thought that just popped into my head? So for example, a good exercise, if I say, row, row, row your boat, in your mind, you may have just heard, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, merrily, merrily. You may have actually heard the song. You may have actually seen it in your mind, but you didn't actually hear it with your ears, and I didn't finish the sentence. Or if I said, jingle bells, in your mind, you may have heard jingle all the way. That is just a quick exercise on clairvoyance, the ability to see within your mind's eye. Some people in history, in religious texts, in scriptures, they talk about this as the third eye, and that third eye resides right between your 2 eyebrows, right in between your eyes, just a little bit above. And the reason they call it the third eye, in my studies and my prospecting of spiritualism, is there's actually a gland called the pineal gland, or the pineal gland, that's in the brain, and it actually has the exact same makeups. It has liquid, a little cornea, the same tissue as an eyeball that actually resides in the brain, except it just doesn't see like the other 2 eyes. So that's where I learned to say we have 3 eyes in life: 2 to see, 1 to look. And the physical eyes are what see the external world, but one to look is help you to go within and to see those different experiences and start to tap into after-death communications, or ADCs. So that's the first clairvoyance, the ability to see within your mind. Now, the second one is called clairsentience. Today, we're going to work on clairaudience for today's episode, but clairsentience, most people in life have had this experience. Clairsentience is the ability to feel what is unseen. So, for example, I just said the wind. I can see the wind, I could go outside, I could feel the wind, but I don't see it with my physical eye. Maybe you've gone to a certain location, or you've been around a certain person, and they just make your hair stand up. Or you are in an area that has a lot of electricity, and that hair on your skin maybe like stands up, or you get the shivers, or you just get this overall warmth. We call that clairsentience, which is the ability to feel which is unseen. And the reason you can feel that is because the skin, from an anatomy and physiology standpoint, the skin is the largest organ on the body. So in just a few minutes, I've given you two examples of actually how to feel the spirit world and how to see the spirit world. And for today, we're going to talk about clairaudience and the intelligent communications with after-death communications. But why do mediumship? You know, I know today mediumship is for entertainment and being on television and writing books and more for fame. I didn't go down this path for that. I went down this path because of bereavement. I went down this path because of great grief and loss and trauma and tragedy and my own near-death experience. So I wanted to learn more about what this spirit world of love and intelligence was communicating with me. We always like to say that, you know, in mediumship, as a spiritualist, when somebody comes to me for a reading, here to care, here to support, here to listen. And grief is the price we pay for love. That is the price we pay. And, you know, like I said, as a spiritualist, spirituality is to recognize that death is not the end of life. The love that we have for people while alive continues after death because the soul is eternal. This knowledge can be of great comfort and help us when a loved one passes to the spirit world. And of course, we grieve as we no longer have the physical presence of that person around us. Maybe we can't hear their voice. Maybe we can't, feel their presence. We can't see them from day to day. And we have to go back to maybe a voicemail or a picture, something on social media, a video, what have you. And we've lost that physical. And I just did a reading with a client the other day, and she goes, I lost my dad. And I told her, no, my friend, you have not lost your dad. You've just got to look for him in a different way. And one of the ways that I teach on to experience, if you've never had an after-death communication with somebody, is to do these 4 simple things. Ask, believe, receive, perceive. It's that simple. So we're going to ask, because our thoughts become our words, and when we put words out into our external environment, there's a vibration there. And everything is vibration, energy, and frequency. So I'm going to ask. I want to talk with my brother. I'm going to believe. You got to have a little bit of belief in this, because it's really hard to capture and experience an ADC, an after-death communication, if there's no belief. And I get it. I've worked with people all around the world with different cultures, different beliefs, from full believers to agnostics to full atheists. And when I do an event, I am so amazed of how the spirit world goes right back to the back row, which we usually call critics row or skeptics row, and they're usually the first to get a reading. So, it's quite interesting and intelligent to me to experience that. But at the same time, ask, believe, then you're going to receive. And those 2 ways that I just shared with you, clairsentience and clairvoyance, is a lot how people first experience that in the mind and what they feel on their body or skin or hair. So ask, believe, receive, and then of course you're going to perceive that based on your own systems of belief, how you were raised. Like I said, when I started receiving this information, I really struggled with the religious context of things because of what I was taught in one book. But later in life, realized that's just one book of many great books. And what I found from doing this work, when I ask, believe, receive, perceive, I teach people during a reading or during an event to also ask for signs. When you're asking, ask your loved one. Ask, send me a dime from heaven. I have a stack of dimes on my counter right in front of me. So I have 3 stacks of dimes from my brothers that send me dimes all the time. And, I find them. Now, of course, logically in the real world, somebody most likely dropped it or it fell out of a pocket. But for me, when I see that, it triggers my clairvoyance to think of my brothers. So ask, believe, receive, perceive. Look for signs, look for symbols, look for synergy, and that synergy is the blending of our energy in our heart with the energy that's not seen. When those two come together, that's a synergy. That's a blending of communications. It's still a form of communications, just not a vibration off a vocal cord. And then, of course, synchronicities. We always want to, the logical mind is really good at wasting away or trying to debunk, oh, that was just a coincidence. That was a synchronicity. I can't say that anymore because I just don't believe it in all the experiences I've had. But doing mediumship, when somebody comes to me, it's also about, helping somebody through a trying time. Mediumship and after-death communications is helping somebody that is grieving. And I've been part of many research topics. I've done a lot of shows on this. I found in some certain facts of doing mediumship readings and the treatment of grief, unresolved grief can cause significant mental and physical distress. I experienced this firsthand. The consensus within the bereavement literature is that grief counseling is at best ineffective, while at worst harmful to clients seeking help. I did biofeedback. I did grieving in bereavement counseling. I've done hypnotherapy. I've done about everything there is to understand the mind, the grief, the loss. I found that pharmaceutical interventions are often ineffective, and acute grief response due to delayed efficacy based on I'm trying to cope with it through a different means of just ignoring it and not thinking about it. But also there's a lot of data out there that actually back up having a positive effect after a reading with a medium. So when it comes to bereavement, there's some do's and don'ts that may help you for having your first ADC, an after-death communication. And do give yourself time to adapt. Grief does not have a calendar. Grief does not have a timeline. Do seek help if you need to. That's very, very important. Whether it's through a medium, a counselor, somebody that's a certified, provider of whatever you're looking for, somebody that's been trained for many years. Don't isolate yourself if you're grieving. That's something, again, I'm speaking from personal experiences. Don't bottle up your emotions. I'm speaking to all you guys out there. Women are really good at not bottling up their emotions and communicating. Guys, not so much, me included, but I've gotten better over time. Don't feel inadequate because you are finding it hard to come to terms with the death of your loved one. For me, it was survivor's guilt because both my brothers passed, and I dealt for years with survivor's guilt. And it was really hard until I got a little bit of education and knowledge to release that and not feel inadequate because of them passing over. Don't refuse help from family and friends and colleagues. If there's somebody that's trying to help you, take the help. It'll be worth it in the end. It's literally about finding that diamond within. But I found that, mediumship is therapeutic, it's transformative, it's healing. It's healing for the medium that's doing the work, and it's also healing for those that seek out the medium. And nothing to be scared of, nothing, like I said, in a Hollywood movie. I found just the opposite. So I find that, grief is resolved when the bereaved and those that are grieving are able to recognize their continuous bonds with their loved ones, that they start to see these signs, these symbols, these after-death communications, if you will, and that spiritual healing and transformation that takes place. So I always tell people that when I work with them, they still come back to me for advice and to help them. But if you're listening to this, show today, you can do it right now. You can ask, believe, receive, perceive. Take a second. It doesn't happen real time. You're going to usually get a big booming voice from the sky. You're not going to see a big burning bush up on a hill. You might, and that's cool if you do. But give it time to unfold because humans live in a time construct. We want it right now. We want it yesterday. But sometimes, it's not in our time. It's in the spirit world's time for when they want to deliver that message in a divine, timely way. So give yourself time. Ask, believe, receive, perceive. Look for signs. Look for symbols. Look for that synergy or that synchronistic event. And ask them to be very clear and concise with what they're presenting to you. You may get a body double. You may get like I said, pennies from heaven, or I get dimes. I keep asking them to keep sending me Benjamins or $50 bills or $100 bills, but so far that hasn't worked. Feathers, my mom finds feathers all the time for my one brother. That spirit scent, which is that special smell directly or indirectly connected with your loved one. It may be a perfume, it may be a cologne, maybe they smoked a cigar or a pipe. Maybe it's just a unique smell to them. We call that spirit sense. Maybe it's music from the other side, a kiss from heaven. It could be a specific song, and the lyrics of music I find just so powerful. When somebody hears a song, you listen to the lyrics, you're like, oh my goodness, wow, that is just amazing. It's like they're talking to you without having that voice, but you can just feel their presence. Repeating numbers. I work with numerology a lot. Nature signs. It could be butterflies, dragonflies, ladybug, hummingbirds, red cardinal, a robin, a whale, a dolphin. What have you. Dream visitations. I think this is one of the easiest forms of communications from a loved one to inform you of their new life and spirit. Really. Technology. I find the interactions with technology, as technology continues to be more advanced, there's actually somebody working on a soul phone right now, and it's just a matter of time that I do feel that technology will continue to bridge that unseen world to the seen world. Flickering lights, computer going on and off, body doubles. That's somebody that looks like somebody that you've lost in the physical world, but they're still alive in the spirit world. That's happened to me specifically. Spirit orbs and photos. I bet the list goes on and on. You can look that up after the show of signs, symbols, synergy, and synchronistic events. So we're going to go to our final break, and when we come back, we're going to pick up with an exercise on clairaudience and talk a little bit more about the structure and is Jesus okay with the psychic ability and mediumship? We'll discuss on the other side of the commercial. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Have you wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
One planet, 7.3 billion people, only one you. Life offers us many opportunities and learning experiences. Are you ready to explore and discover this beautiful planet, the life and energy all around us, the spiritual world, and what is unseen, along with your own personal soul adventure? Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, is the spiritual connection you have been prospecting for. Internationally known as a tested and professional clairvoyant medium and spiritual advisor, Marc's work as a metaphysical teacher, medical instructor, radio show host, inspirational writer, and hiking guide are here to help you on a journey of self-discovery, healing, inspiration, education, and a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. Dare to dream. Dare to explore. Dare to live. For more information on Marc's spiritual practice in Seattle, Washington, please visit marclainhart.com or internet search The Intuitive Prospector.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
if you could find a way,
To get inside.
each other's mind.
walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
All right, welcome back of the last section of Inspired Living. Today we're talking about after-death communication, also known as ADCs. And as we're going to get ready for a exercise and a brief meditation, I want to just give you some advantages of mediumship readings. And, like I said before the break, I had to really work hard with my own belief systems and the systems that I was brought up in to understand it. Should I even be doing mediumship? Is mediumship going to send me to a bad place, or is it going to bring bad things into my life, or is it going to project if I'm practicing mediumship and psychic abilities onto other people? And unfortunately, some people do believe that, but I don't. And some of the advantages of doing mediumship readings and having after-death communications with your loved ones, your fur babies. Readings, I find, can be less frightening and easier to understand than more personal, spontaneous ADCs. When you have somebody that's been trained and educated and have gone through courses to understand this, they can be less frightening. I know people still get nervous when they come and have a reading with me, but my job is to have them walk out feeling differently than when they first walked in. And being a minister now and being accredited with psychic and mediumship, it really is about dealing with grief, honoring your grief through the power of mourning, transformations and spiritual healing, knowing that consciousness and life does live on after death. I found that, a reading may be preferred for individuals who long for contact but have never experienced that. As a medium, we serve as non-judgmental participants, as a messenger, as a voice for the voiceless, who will not disparage the experience of anybody that's being bereaved or grieving, and really to have a reunion from spirit, through spirit, me, to you as a spirit. And that's what ADCs can be. And like I said before the break, ask, believe, receive, perceive, ask for those signs, ask for those symbols, ask for that synergy of those synchronistic events. There's other ways that the spirit world can get your attention, and like I said, it's not going to usually be in the form of a voice. It could be that gut feeling, shivers down your back. You may see a flash in your image. A lot of people get this when they're driving. All of a sudden, grandma pops in. You're like, where did that come from? A positive voice with just a brief message. It's timing. Those smells that you're smelling something. Maybe it's what we call an earth angel, which is another person who is physically alive that delivers information directly to you. I've had both. I've been that person, and I've had that been delivered to me as an earth angel. You may find yourself giving advice to another person and realize that is exactly the advice you needed to hear, or something your loved one would have said. Deja vu, or the glitch in the matrix, a series of unmistakable repeating symbols or signs or number sequences or patterns. They usually come in threes that I've learned with the spirit world. So with that, I asked before the break, is Jesus okay? Would Jesus be okay? Because there is a Christ consciousness. I do believe in God. I do believe that Jesus was a very powerful person, probably one of the best psychic mediums of all time. And is Jesus okay with psychic ability and mediumship? Again, it depends on what context of the Bible you read. If you're reading the Old Testament, probably not. If you're reading the New Testament, you'll have a different perspective. But I found that I believe yes, and here's why. This is for people in a typical Christian thought structure. And although if we were born and raised in the Western world like I am, we probably have some of this structure somewhere in our minds, somewhere in our daily lives. But if you go to a different part of the world, India, China, Pakistan, you will see that there's a different philosophy and spiritualism. And I have asked, would God approve of my mediumship, my intuition, my consciousness, my spiritualism, my psych abilities? And for some people, their view of God is very, very narrow. Maybe never having taken the time to read and think about their own holy book, depending on the list that I read earlier, from the Quran to the Holy Bible to the Bhagavad Gita. I'll get that someday. But they're restricted to traditional ways of thinking, maybe confusing it with the religion that they say are basing their information on. Their knowledge is not based on what they've experienced for themselves, and I've learned that people won't understand until they've gone through it. That's the big thing. They won't understand until they go through it. So you have to really just start to research, because like I said, in the Old Testament, I know a lot about scripture, from Leviticus to Deuteronomy to 1 Samuel to Jeremiah. In the Old Testament, there's a lot of pretty harsh rhetoric in there. But if you go to the New Testament, one of my favorite books is Corinthians, and it talks about your spiritual gifts. It talks about your ability to have that that higher source of connecting to psychic and mediumship. I'm not going to give you everything in this episode, but there's things right now. There's 11 things that the Bible bans, but you do it anyway. There's 76 things banned in just the book of Leviticus, and they're penalties if you apply the Old Testament. There's 37 things banned in Exodus, and they're penalties if you just go by the Old Testament. But in the New Testament, that's what I'm saying is have perspective, learn to read and have different perspectives of different religions, the gifts of spirit, because in 1 Corinthians 12, it talks about a word of wisdom, a word of knowledge, faith, gifts of healing, working of miracles, prophecy, discerning of spirits. It lays psychic ability out right there in a nutshell. So make sure to read that. You can also read John verse 14:12 about how Jesus, now Christ incarnate, did an amazing thing. And even Edgar Cayce, America's greatest psychic, stated to develop your psychic ability, develop yourself spiritually, and the rest will come by itself. In Buddhism, they call it siddhis, which is supernatural powers acquired by spiritual development through meditation. So for the sake of time, we're going to do a quick meditation. I shared with you clairsentience, the ability to see in your mind's eye, row, row, row your boat. So that's clairvoyance, clairsentience, the ability to feel the spirit world. And so we're going to start this meditation for just a few minutes, and we're going to work on clairaudience. Train yourself to hear the astral sounds and why this works. As you train your brain, as you train yourself, you start to hear more in the physical world. It's going to be easier for you to pick up sounds from the spirit world. And what happens is we live in a very noisy world. The spirit world is not noisy. It's actually quite subtle. So cue the meditation music. Take a nice deep breath. Set the intention to ask, believe, receive, and perceive. Asking for signs, symbols, synergy, synchronistic events. Today we're working on how to develop your clairaudience, the ability to hear the spirit world. Just feel that vibration. Feel that vibration off your eardrum. And if it's safe to do so, go ahead and close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. Deep breaths, the mind becomes less active. The communication chatter of the brain starts to quiet, and that's good. We're meant to think, but the game becomes how to balance between what you're thinking and what you're hearing. So set the intention that you want to increase your psychic hearing, your psychic abilities. In the laws of physics, we know that energy follows intention, so intention and manifesting is very important, along with visualization. And as you continue to breathe, relax your body and let hearing now become your dominant sense. Let hearing become your dominant sense. Gently tune into the sounds that you're hearing right now that you wouldn't normally focus in on. And what do you hear with these sounds? What do these sounds remind you of? Does it take you to a special place or remind you of a loved one? This is the beginning of your clairaudience to work in conjunction with your other 5 physical senses. You can do this exercise in different locations outside, in nature, during a concert, maybe a song, your cell phone, maybe a choir or some sort of concert. Take another nice deep breath in with our intention to work on clairaudience, to experience after-death communications or ADCs. And just notice one specific sound that you hear. Maybe there's a more subtle sound in the background. Maybe there's a humming or a vibration. This is a great exercise for discernment, to differentiate between your thoughts and a clairaudient message. Nice deep breath, focusing on the ability to hear the spirit world, to have an intelligent, loving conversation with your loved ones that's passed over through death. Maybe it's the first time you're hearing your higher self, your higher being. Maybe it's a spirit guide for you, or ascended master, someone that hasn't gone through the incarnate, discarnate of death. This exercise with other songs. I like to do this with Dave Matthews, the Dave Matthews Band, and listen to all the different instruments. And just envisioning the sound now in your mind, triggering your clairvoyance. And maybe this sound is triggering your clairsentience, the ability, that vibration to make your hair stand up. Science has shown us that telepathic thought is real. It does exist. And working with sound and music, sound baths, singing bowls, meditations, these are all great ways to strengthen not only clairaudience, but your psychic abilities, and to maybe have your first after-death communication, or ADC, or to continue the conversation as I do, reunions and communications from your loved ones in spirit. And as we start to blend the three together, clairvoyance, clairsentience, and clairaudience, stretch yourself beyond the music now. What other sounds can you imagine in your mind's eye, in your third eye? Maybe this meditation has triggered a memory, a sound of your brother playing an instrument, or an intense game of pickup basketball. Maybe it's your father outside working, building the shed, or your mom baking in the kitchen. Maybe it's your grandmother yelling at you to stay out of trouble, to wash your hands, to do your chores. Go beyond the music now. Maybe it's a favorite concert. Maybe it's a memory of something you've done that you haven't thought of years ago. Developing your clairaudience can be really easy in just imagining this sound and the sound of my voice in your mind. Row, row, row your boat. Jingle bells, jingle bells. These are triggers, and if you practice daily, you ask, believe, receive, and perceive, looking for signs, symbols, synergy, and synchronistic events, I guarantee you will start to unfold and start to see the unseen and have after-death communications, or ADCs, with no fear of punishment or going to a dark place full of fire, but to experience love, healing, transformations, and knowing that life continues on after death. Make sure to raise your vibration through the practice of meditation. Seek out teachers and mentors and those that are professional that can help you and guide you. And don't beat yourself up. It's a key function of our minds to think, so of course we can't just switch it off. Like all exercises, it takes practice. That's how you get to Carnegie Hall, through practice and dedication. And as we get ready to close the show, find yourself floating off through the power of breath and connection, knowing that your loved ones, God, your spirit guides, angels, ascended masters, your fur babies, are only ever a thought away. And that you can ask them for spirit messages simply by asking, believing, receiving, perceiving. And to have a two-way communication of intelligence and love. And it makes you more confident in your clairaudient abilities. And this is where we'll leave you today for another episode of Inspired Living Radio. Have a great rest of your day. Namaste.